before we start this video, I want to thank everyone that's jumped on here and subscribed recently and given me some likes. It means the world to me. I never really considered doing a YouTube channel until we were in the COVID-19 quarantine. I was watching a lot of YouTube and came across a couple of videos on how to create a channel, how to make decent videos, and how to actually make it part of how you earn your living. So thank you all. Please share this with your friends and family if you've got any of them that are interested in art or already drawing art but might need a little help. Send them this way, and I'll be more than happy to do some videos to help them along the way. As always, if there's something specific that you want to learn about or just hear about, drop it in the comments and I'll try to make a video covering that for you. Thanks. Welcome back, art nerds. I'm Lou, and today's episode we're going to cover some progress on a couple of larger paintings that I have going on, oil paintings for commissions. And I have the in-between painting that I had last time when I had the 3 smaller paintings going on. That one's all set. I've got all the details in there, the final color. I just glazed it today, and I'll show you a little video on that. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. All right, commission painting number 1 that you'll be seeing is a really fun one. And I have a hard time calling it a commission. I've been paid for it, but it was kind of a retainer amount of money for future artworks. And in passing, she said, you should do a portrait of my cat. Now, I know her, and I know a classic portrait of a cat curled up on a chair is not what she's after. So my thinking was to do kind of a Baroque Victorian type painting of a queen, because this cat's kind of got an attitude, and rather than the queen's face, it'll be the cat. And instead of holding a scepter, she's holding one of those little mousy cat toys. So that was my first impression. I thought it was a good idea, and I sketched it out on the canvas, and I've started that painting already. Alright, so how I started this painting, I took my canvas and set it up on my easel, and I had the idea for what my subject was going to be. I also looked at some old Baroque paintings to get a feel for how they're usually done. A lot of times they're very dark looking, so I wanted to keep a nice dark, lush kind of background. Lush meaning like just that deep velvety kind of dark color in the back. And I also wanted to make sure I had a good composition. One of the rules, at least for myself and for the majority of other artists, one of the rules in composition is you try to not put things directly in the center of your canvas. It's boring to look at. When we look at things, they're usually not very centered right in front of us anyway, so it's a little more realistic when things are just a bit askew. There's a formula for that. Typically, you could take your canvas or paper, whatever it is, divide it into thirds horizontally and into thirds vertically. Where those intersections meet, those 4 spots are really good areas to put something important there. Where this is one big subject right on the canvas, I didn't quite hit one of those spots, but I did shift the whole thing kind of over onto one side a little bit, just to make it a little more interesting. And then turning her at a little bit of an angle is also something that's more interesting to look at. I'll do a video that covers composition, how the eye travels through a painting. We'll do that all by itself because there's a few things to go over on that. So I've got my canvas on the easel. I grab out my sketch pencil and start to lay out the basic idea. I don't start every painting exactly the same, but for this one in particular, I wanted to get my background laid in before I even began painting my subject. That's something that I didn't pick up until a couple of years ago, and it has made my paintings so much easier and so much better looking. A lot of times I think backgrounds tend to be an afterthought to some artists. They focus so much on the subject that they're drawing or painting And then when that's done, they look at the background. It's like, oh, like what do I do? So I try to now get that blocked in there at minimum. Sometimes I will do a completely finished background, kind of like the bird that's behind me. I finished that background almost 100% before I even started painting the bird. Once I was done with the bird, my background's already there, and it was a matter of just smoothing things out. So that's definitely a good thing to put into your process. You're gonna be more motivated when you're painting. Seeing that background already there kind of pulls you into that scene. So I get my character on there. The next step is to grab my acrylic paints. I grabbed some black and some red. I knew that my background was going to be a very warm color, red. So I wanted to get half of the work done with acrylics, so I'm not using a ton of oil paint to try to make that background solid. So starting on the left side, brought up some black, started transitioning into a red, bringing the red up on that side, and then kind of blending them all together. I took it a little bit further than I normally do with an acrylic underpainting. I wanted to at least get the majority of my gradient from the black to the red going. I knew that in the top corner I was going to put a hint of a light source there when I get to my oils. Didn't need to do it with the acrylics. So once that background was all laid in there with acrylics, I lost part of my sketch, like I had said, but I could still see some of it. So it was an easy matter for me to take some white acrylic and to start reshaping my character, again in a very basic sense, just getting the major parts in there, the head and the arms, the body, and then I grabbed a smaller brush and laid in the cat toy, so that when I get to my oils, I know where everything's going to be. I have taken that painting a little bit further and started my oils in there. Building that background up a little bit, I used alizarin crimson and sap green. I mix those two together when I want to get a really dark value that's almost black. Mixing complementary colors together. Let's say our background was going to have an orange tint to it going into a very dark thing. From that orange, I would start blending in a really dark blue into it, and that's going to create that black. Very rarely do I actually use an ivory black in my paintings, at least in the beginning. Towards the end, sometimes I'll use that if I need to darken some shadows or pupils in an eye, or things like that. But a long time ago, I got out of the habit of using black because I find that it's almost too much and it will affect colors. It's not a very natural shadow. All right, the other commission painting that I have is for a good friend of mine, Nate. He was a client back when I was in Albuquerque, a tattoo client. Recently he's been buying a lot of paintings from me, probably since he can't get tattooed, and he does enjoy my art, so this is a great way to get some art into your life, decorate your world, and when you find an artist that you like, it's nice to be able to still get some pieces from him. Nate is a former Marine. He really loves the Marine Corps, the whole idea of it. Loves it or hates it. It's really hard to tell with him sometimes. He does make fun of it a lot, but I think that comes from a place of love. So he's the one that recently got the pterodactyl on the globe with the anchor, a little spoof on the Marine Corps emblem. For this one, he thought it would be a cool idea to have a green plastic army man, and rather than holding a gun, he's holding a crayon, and then behind him on the wall, in kind of kid-like writing, is Semper Fi, backwards letters and all that. That was pretty much all he had told me. Didn't really give me a setting other than the plastic army guy, the wall, and that's it. So I sketched around with it a little bit and came up with a good pose that I thought. There's so many different poses with those little green army men. I found a really good one that I thought was a little comical because he's kind of holding it out like he just turned around and is about to shoot someone with his crayon. And then I also know that Nate is a bit of a military historian. He does like military history. He knows a lot about it. So I subtly included several different periods of war in this painting. You can't really see it too much just yet, but follow me on this. The Green Army Man is very reminiscent of the Vietnam era Korean War. The green uniform, the green helmet, all that. So that kind of reminds me of that period. The wall behind him is kind of a sand-colored stucco wall, very reminiscent of Iraq and the Middle East type area, which is I know is where Nate had served part of his time there. And then way in the background, in the air, there are 3 planes flying by. Those are very just lightly sketched in there, but those are going to be reminiscent of a World War II bomber planes going by. And we've got our black billowing smoke and some flames. So it's a matter of taking someone's idea and then viewing it through your artistic eyes and pushing that just a little bit more. But you don't want to push it so far that their idea is lost. So I kept my focus on the Green Army Man. He's the main thing that you see. He's also going to be the brightest, most vibrant thing that you see. I took that composition rule, rather than putting him in the center, pulled him down a bit off to the left, lower left. The bombers in the air are kind of in that upper right quadrant where we want to have good composition, and I'm pretty happy with it so far. So this one has gone through the sketch phase with the sketch pencil. Took some acrylics, just black and gray, or black and white and gray. Laid in the basic design, messed around with lettering a bit, and then I've taken this up through 2 layers of oil. One basic one just to block in my colors and my shapes, and then the next layer, I did a little more work to the sky, adding a little bit of a blue in the distance. The sky is mainly kind of this burnt red, black, orange kind of ominous sky. And then on the wall behind him, I started in the rubble that's below it, building up some more color and some texture. I wanted that wall to have kind of a sandy stucco kind of feel to it. So I took a large filbert brush at first, and using some titanium white, yellow ochre, and Payne's gray, which looks black, but once it hits the canvas, you can definitely tell that it's just a gray. And I started kind of modeling that wall, just kind of spushing and poking at it, kind of stippling in some texture detail, but without getting too technical. You don't want to get in there at this stage with a really fine brush and trying to put all in the little sand bits and everything. You could do that later in the painting. All right, and then finally, the in-between painting that I had from the last couple of episodes, the songbird. That one's all done. Some fun stuff happened with this one too. I added in the music notes, added some more detail to the bird. Everything was looking cool. I hung it on the wall to dry. After about a day or two, I looked at it and the background was still a bit too dark. It was almost the same value as the bird. So I went in and added some white and some lavender around the bird, trying to brighten that area, but without making it obnoxiously bright. Made the first pass on it, let that dry, looked at it, still needed a bit more, so I boosted that a bit more. I was very happy with that. Once I let that dry, another thing I noticed were the music notes I had done with a gloss black with little white highlights in it. Those were also getting lost in there, so I said, all right, I really need to pop those out a bit. I took a silver enamel paint, so a metallic silver enamel, and I highlighted the edges of all the music notes all the way around, and that did the trick perfectly. Hung that on the wall. I could see the music notes. They weren't obnoxiously bright, but they were bright enough that you could see they were there from a distance. The white that I put behind the bird, everything was great. And just before I shot this video, I thought, I should do a varnish on this. I was going to spray it with my glaze and realized I still had a little bit of that liquid varnish around, so I thought I would show you some of that. All right, so some fun things happened with this bird during the glazing process, the varnishing process. I'll get to that in a bit. Before you glaze your painting, you want to clear it of any dust, dirt, lint, things like that. You'd be surprised how much stuff collects on there when your painting's just hanging on the wall drying. There is a texture to the canvas, so if there's any kind of dust in the air, it's going to land and collect on those. So sometimes I'll just blow it off with a hair dryer, or I'll take an actual duster. You can also get, they call them tack cloths. You can get them at usually auto supply store or auto body supply store. You definitely will find them there, or a paint store. They're basically just these tacky cloths that you can kind of lightly tap across it, and it'll pick up any little bits of material that are on there, dust and lint and things. So make sure that's clear. You want to look for any brush bristles that are on there. The reason being, once you glaze or varnish it, that's going to get locked in there, and it's also going to create a little rise, which is going to catch light. So a painting hanging on the wall, depending on the lighting, you'll notice all those little bumps and bristles poking out because the glaze is very shiny and the light reflects off of that. So make sure that's nice and clear. The next thing is you want to have a good, clear, flat surface to put your painting on, to varnish it. Once you pour that varnish, gravity is going to take over and it's going to want to pull it to the lowest point. So a nice flat area, and you don't want to overdo it with a whole lot of varnish, pouring a whole lot of varnish on there at first. Start with a medium-sized amount. You'll get the hang of how much you really need on there. So if you're not sure, start with less. You can always add more. If you start with a ton of varnish on there, it really is a bear trying to get that off once you've spread it everywhere and it's just still puddling. Really tough to get that off of there. Start with a little, add more if you need it. You want to pour your varnish in the center of the painting. Don't start up near an edge or a corner because once you start grabbing that to move it around, it's going to spill over the edges. It'll create drips and runs, which you don't want. So you can see that I start with a nice good sized puddle in the middle, and I start brushing in different directions. A few strokes vertically, then cross that around horizontally, and kind of keep going back. You could even go diagonal if you need to. And I knew I was going to want to get some on my edges, so I brought some of that to the edge of my painting, let it kind of roll over, took my brush and got the sides of my painting glazed in a bit as well. And there were a few spots once I kind of spread everything around, I kind of moved my head to let the light hit it differently, and I noticed some dry spots in the corners. So I had to pour in just a little bit more just to get those corners covered up. Now the fun thing that happened to this painting when I was varnishing is that enamel paint that I used, the silver metallic that I used around the music notes, I didn't really think about it before I started varnishing, but that's only been on there for about a day. And enamel paint takes a long time, sometimes longer than oils, to fully dry and cure. I didn't notice until I was brushing this stuff that it was smearing that silver, and it was creating these streaks kind of coming off of it. After the minor heart attack that I had, I took another look at it, and I actually really enjoyed what it did, because those notes are meant to be flowing out from the bird and swooping around. So the streaks actually added a cool little motion element to them. So I'm going to leave it on there. I'm going to leave that the way it is. And if you've ever heard of Bob Ross or looked at any of his videos, if you're my age, you probably saw them in the mornings on TV. He had a great phrase that everyone uses now. If you've spent more than 2 minutes talking to an artist, you've heard this phrase, and it's happy little accidents. That's a great example of a happy little accident. It wasn't planned, but it did add a little bit extra to my painting that I really enjoyed. So when those things happen, relax, look at it. If it does look bad, now you got to fix it. But let your mind run with it a little bit and see if it is something that added another element to your painting that you never would have thought of. And now the next time I do something like this, that's gonna pop into my head, and I may actually purposely add that in there next time I do something. This is how we learn. Trial and error, never being afraid to work with what you've got, and maybe it's something that you never would have thought of and now becomes a big part of your style. So that's my episode for today. I think what I'm going to do is on Mondays, I will probably do videos like this that cover progress on current projects that I have going on. And then on Tuesdays, I will do a technique or a specific type of art, almost tutorial type video. As always, thank you again for stopping by and checking out my videos. Please hit that like button. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. The more subscribers I get, the closer I get to being able to monetize this station and hopefully have another source of income for this winter when they lock us all down again and I can't tattoo. So keep on drawing, get paint all over yourself, and have fun. See you around.